And Buck, I think that's over. I think that's done. But
What do you mean?
I think his career is finished.
That line from 50 Cent didn't just hit hard, it cracked the whole story open. Because right after Young Buck filed for bankruptcy, got crushed by IRS debts, and even ended up sitting in jail over probation violations, his whole career started falling apart in slow motion like nobody ever expected. People thought it was just bad luck, but the truth behind all this was way darker than anyone on the outside ever realized. From the streets straight to stardom, Buck's climb had a raw edge that you could feel in every move he made. Growing up in Nashville, Tennessee, young David Brown wasn't living comfortable by any stretch. He was bouncing around all over the city, learning how to survive in different zones before he even understood what danger really meant. From Seafright in North Nashville to South Nashville's J.C. Napier projects, then sliding over to the South 7th projects, he was moving through different worlds non-stop and absorbing everything he saw. By the time he was a kid, Buck already knew Nashville like the back of his hand. East, west, every block, every corner.
But what did happen was Buck and Lil Jimmy ended up meeting everybody at Cash Money Records, and the first thing that Birdman told Buck was to spit a freestyle for him, and he put him up against Lil Wayne at that time, and they went back and forth. And that ended up impressing Birdman.
That early chaos shaped him heavy, building that fire that later came out in his music. And to help the family keep things afloat, Buck was hustling the legit way, pumping gas for tips, cutting lawns, washing whips, anything that could put a few dollars in his pocket. He wasn't sitting around waiting on miracles. He was grinding because he had no choice. Music became his escape, his therapy, his whole dream. Started freestyling with his day one homies, battling anyone brave enough to step up, sharpening his skills every single day. Slowly but surely, he built a buzz in Nashville's underground hip-hop scene, earning respect off raw talent alone. His voice, his hunger, his energy, everything screamed that he was destined for something bigger. Then came the moment that really showed just how fearless Buck was. One day, him and his homie got their hands on a BG Chopper City CD, and on the back cover was a phone number to Cash Money Records. Most people would have shrugged and kept it moving, but not these two. They actually called that number with the wildest plan imaginable. They told Cash Money they wanted to book them for a show in Nashville for around $5,000. Like they were real promoters ready to make big moves. The craziest part? Somebody on the other end actually took them serious enough to move forward with it. The show never ended up happening, but what did happen flipped Buck's whole life into a new lane forever. It set the stage for everything. The fame, the drama, the betrayals, the downfall, all of it.
Buck ended up coming on with them and hopefully having his situation figured out as well. But as years went on, Buck said he spent 3 to 4 years with Cash Money and none of his music ever got released. He got essentially put on the back burner while the other artists on Cash Money like Lil Wayne, Juvenile, BG, so on and so forth ended up blowing up.
Birdman wasn't just impressed. He was blown away by how bold and hungry Buck was. So much that he brought him straight down to New Orleans to possibly lock in a deal with Cash Money Records. This was the type of moment most artists could only dream about. And Buck wasn't even built for hesitation. He saw a door open and ran right through it. At just 14 years old, Buck made one of the biggest decisions of his entire life, dropping out of school completely so he could chase rap full-time. We ain't here to argue whether a decision like that is smart or not for someone that young. But it shows you the level of commitment he had. This man was ready to risk everything for a mic. This wasn't no side hustle or safety net. This was his whole escape plan from the hood, and he believed in it with his whole heart. The only real proof Buck has from his whole run with Cash Money is his appearance in the Big Timers' Big Ballin' music video, and after a few years of waiting with no real progress, the frustration finally hit him hard.
And out of my ordeal back in the streets, I ended up getting shot in a home invasion and a robbery. One in the arm and one in the upper thigh area. It was enough for me to wake up and really realize that, yo, if this shit keep going on like this, I'm either to get killed or I'm go to jail. And I really realized that because I was getting down for real. Really started to devote more of my time to the music then, the studio, period.
By 1999, he was tired of sitting on the sidelines watching everyone else rise while he stayed stuck. So he made the tough call to leave Cash Money and head back to Nashville to build something of his own. But those years weren't wasted, not even close. He learned priceless lessons about the music business, saw how real money was being made, and built important connections with people like DJ Paul from 3 6 Mafia and Juvenile, relationships that would become major keys later on. Back in Nashville, Buck reconnected with his hometown crew and went right back into grind mode, this time with more knowledge and hunger than before. No label support, no big machine behind him, just pure hustle. On August 22, 2000, he dropped Thuggin' Till the End with his homie D-Tay, and something crazy happened that nobody in the city expected. This independent project actually hit the Billboard charts, landing at number 34 on the US R&B chart and number 17 on the Independent Albums chart. For an unknown Nashville rapper pushing CDs out the trunk, this was massive. Buck managed to move about 10,000 units, which might sound small next to major label artists. But for an independent street rapper running his own operation, that was real money and real validation. More importantly, it showed that this rap dream wasn't just fantasy. People were actually listening, supporting, and wanting more of what Buck was bringing.
Juvie happened to pull up at the office, and when he pulled up, he was kind of shocked to see me there. I'm like, I've been here for a whole week. And he was like, man, you want to get up out of here for a minute? You know what I'm saying? And I took that ride with Juvie, and that's where my career started with Juvie.
Then came the moment that shook him to his core and forced him to make a life-changing decision. After surviving a home invasion robbery where he got hit up and had to recover physically and mentally, Buck promised himself something serious. No more street life, no more jumping between lanes, full dedication to music and nothing else. That moment put everything into perspective for him. And right when he needed support the most, an opportunity came back around through his old Cash Money connection, DJ Paul from 3 6 Mafia. Paul had always respected Buck's talent and pen game, and when he heard about what happened, he reached out immediately. He had Project Pat go scoop Buck from Nashville and bring him to Memphis to record, giving him a shot to turn pain into power. Out of those Memphis sessions came Buck's first major album placement. The track Memphis on 3 6 Mafia's legendary album When the Smoke Clears, 66 61sts. That placement gave Buck the visibility he'd been chasing for years, putting his name in front of a national audience and opening doors he never had before. But even with all that momentum, Buck still didn't sign with 3 6 Mafia instead. He went back to Nashville and kept pushing independently, now with bigger reach, better connects, and more confidence than ever before. Are we getting ahead of ourselves? Because before Buck ever touched a G-Unit chain, the way he actually slid into that camp is one of the wildest twists in his whole story. The G-Unit era didn't just happen. The streets had to shuffle the deck a couple times before everything lined up the way it did. It all started when Birdman, his old Cash Money connection, reached out again with a fresh opportunity. By now, Cash Money wasn't the same hungry label Buck dealt with in the late 90s. The whole operation had exploded into a powerhouse. New buildings, flashier cars, bigger budgets, everything was on another level. And Birdman wanted Buck to join a new group he was building called Head Busa S. Buck flew back to New Orleans, thinking it was finally his moment, but the same old energy started creeping back in. Days passed, he waited around with no paperwork, no plan, and no real movement, just empty promises and studio talk.
A week after the deal fizzled out with UTP, 50 Cent ended up calling Young Buck and said, hey, we want that Bloodhound track, we'll pay you $20,000 for it, let us put it on the album, and the track is getting mixed by Eminem and Dr. Dre.
And Buck wasn't that wide-eyed 14-year-old anymore. He was a grown man with bills, goals, and momentum at home, so wasting time wasn't an option. Then out of nowhere, something crazy happened. Something that flipped the whole story. Juvenile walked into the Cash Money building and was shocked to see Buck still sitting there waiting. At this point, Juvenile was going through his own problems with Cash Money, dealing with tension and disagreements behind the scenes, and he didn't like what he was seeing. So Juvenile made Buck an offer that would change everything. Buck officially joined Juvenile's UTP Records, or at least, that's what everybody thought happened. Because here's where Buck showed some real street intelligence. When Juvenile handed him the contract to sign, Buck took it home, slid it under his bed, and never signed a single page. He wasn't being disrespectful, he was being strategic, he said in quotes. Real talk. That's some right there, and he wasn't lying. He dropped 2 projects during this time, Born to be a Thug on October 10th, 2002, and a UTP Players compilation on October 8th, 2002. But technically, he was never locked in on paper. Why'd he play it like that? Because he was reading the room. He already saw how Cash Money ran things, and now he peeped Juvenile going through his own battles with the same label. Buck realized the foundation wasn't steady, so signing something permanent could trap him in another messy situation. Things got even more interesting when Juvenile himself told Buck that if he ever got a better opportunity, he should take it without hesitation.
Sha Money had became a best friend of mine. I'm the best man on this man's wedding. That's how me and close Sha was. Me and Sha were probably closer than me and 50. Him and 50 was, so I'm the best man of his man's wedding. I'm judging Sha not from a business standpoint of his problems with 50, but looking at him as my brother.
That kind of honesty showed how much respect Juvenile had for him, but it also showed just how unstable everything around UTP and Cash Money was becoming. Then came the moment destiny kicked the door down. Buck and Juvenile were on tour. And when their tour bus stopped in New York, this was 2002, 50 Cent had the hottest buzz in the whole city. We're talking untouchable levels of heat, the type of energy where even the streets couldn't stop mentioning his name. Their tour bus driver happened to know 50's former manager, Shaw Money Exile, and Buck kept pushing him nonstop, asking if there was any way to bring 50 onto the bus so they could cook something up. And somehow it actually happened. 50 showed up, but not for Buck. He came to record with Juvenile specifically. While 50 and Juvenile were in the back of the bus working, Buck made the smartest move of his career. He started playing some of his solo tracks for Lloyd Banks and Tony Yayo, who were chilling up front. One track in particular grabbed Lloyd Banks' attention instantly, so much that he grabbed the beat and walked it straight to the back of the bus where 50 was recording. 50 heard it, rocked with it, and jumped on the track, and that joint would later become Bloodhound on the legendary Get Rich or Die Trying album. That right there was the moment Buck's life started shifting into G-Unit territory, whether he knew it or not. And just so it's clear, that wasn't. Even the first track released with all four of them together, the earliest official joint they appeared on, was a little bit of everything from 50 Cent Is the Future. That's where the chemistry started showing before the world even knew what was coming. Bloodhound was the track that truly pushed Buck into the mainstream spotlight, the one record that made people say, "Who is this dude snapping like that?" Even though 50 liked Buck heavy, he couldn't offer him an official deal yet because he was in even signed to a major label himself. But 50 didn't forget what Buck brought to the table. He didn't forget that hunger or that voice in the moment. UTP started breaking down just like Buck predicted. Fate slid in one more time to line things up perfectly. When 50 hit him up and asked him to fly out to Los Angeles to meet Eminem and Dr. Dre for an official G-Unit signing, that wasn't. Just a big moment that was every rapper's dream landing right in his lap. After everything he'd been through, false starts, broken promises, switching camps, street chaos, Buck finally had a chance to step into something real, something powerful, something game-changing. His first major placement on G-Unit Records was Bloodhound, on Get Rich or Die Trying. But 50 was a mastermind about how to build Buck's profile. Instead of rushing Buck's solo album, 50 dropped the group project Beg for Mercy first, making sure the world saw Buck as an official part of the squad, not just a feature or a side player. That strategy worked. Beg for Mercy debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, moving 377,000 units in the first week and eventually selling over 2.7 million in the US alone, creeping up on Diamond across the world. Buck wasn't just participating at this point, he had arrived, and the entire hood was watching him with respect. Following the signature G-Unit blueprint, Buck dropped his mixtape Welcome to the Hood on May 31st, 2004, hosted by DJ Who Kid, heating up the streets ahead of his solo debut. Then on July 2nd, 2004, he dropped the first single, Let Me In, featuring 50 Cent. And it hit number 34 on the Billboard Hot 100, a serious win for a newcomer. Then the big day came, August 24th, 2004, when Buck released his debut album Straight Out of Cashville. The numbers were insane for a first project. Debuting at number 3 on the Billboard 200, moving 361,000 copies the first week, and eventually going platinum. The second single, Shorty Wanna Ride, became his highest charting solo record, ever hitting number 17 on the Hot 100, and showing the industry that Buck was more than just another rapper in a group. He was a star on his own. But what Buck accomplished went far beyond numbers. For decades, people talked about the Nashville curse, saying non-country artists couldn't break through on a major scale. Buck smashed that myth to pieces, becoming the first hip-hop artist from Nashville to reach national success at that level, proving it was possible and opening the door for a whole new generation from his city. But success comes with shadows, and on November 15, 2004, at the Vibe Awards, things took a turn that would haunt him for years. Dr. Dre, Eminem, 50 Cent, Suge Knight, all of them were in the same room, tension already thick in the air. A man named Jimmy Johnson allegedly put his hands on Dr. Dre. Witnesses claimed young Buck responded by allegedly stabbing Jimmy Johnson in the chaos. The building erupted, and Buck took off, knowing the situation was about to get real messy for him. He eventually turned himself in a couple days later, and the case dragged out for around a year and a half before everything settled. Buck walked away with 3 years probation and 80 hours of community service, which seemed light compared to what could have happened. But the incident left a mark. It was the first major sign that Buck's street instincts and loyalty could collide with his career in dangerous ways. In 2005, despite the tension and legal noise, Buck kept pushing forward and building his name even bigger. He linked with 3 6 Mafia again and appeared on their huge hit Stay Fly, which peaked at number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100 and went double platinum, proving once again that Buck wasn't just hot, he was cemented in the culture. Buck wasn't just rapping at this point, he was building his own corner of the empire. He dropped an independent album to shine light on the upcoming G-Unit South artists, a move 50 had trusted him to lead. Buck was shifting from artist to executive, showing he could run a label branch inside the G-Unit machine and create his own wave while still holding down his spot in the group. 2006 became one of Buck's most active years ever, with him flooding the streets non-stop with mixtapes and gearing up for his next major release. On February 6, 2006, he dropped Case Dismissed, the introduction of G-Unit South with DJ Drama, a tape that served 2 purposes at once. It celebrated him finally beating the legal case from the Vibe Awards incident, and it introduced the world to the artists he planned to build under the G-Unit South banner. But while Buck was focused on his second album, Buck the World, something explosive was brewing behind the scenes. 50 Cent and their mutual manager, Shaw Money Exile, started having serious personal and business issues. It got so heated that 50 sat down the entire G-Unit team and told them straight up. They all needed to find new management because he was cutting ties with Shaw Money immediately. This is where Buck's loyalty, one of the things that made fans love him, suddenly turned into a dangerous weakness in 50's eyes. Buck wasn't just cool with Shaw Money, he was tight with him. So tight that Buck was the best man at Shaw Money's wedding. That wasn't business, that was family to him, and he wasn't about to turn his back on someone who had never done him wrong. So when 50 told everyone to drop Shaw Money, Banks and Yayo followed instructions right away, but Buck refused. In Buck's mind, Shaw Money was still his brother, and the situation between him and 50 was something he believed they would eventually fix. Buck didn't think he was choosing sides. He thought he was simply staying solid to someone who had always stayed solid to him, but 50 didn't see it that way at all. He took it as flat-out disloyalty. As Buck going against him and the resentment kicked in instantly, suddenly Banks, Yayo, and 50 were everywhere together. Shows, appearances, interviews. While Buck and Shaw Money were left promoting Buck the World by themselves, with barely any support from the main G-Unit machine. Buck believes this is a huge reason why Buck the World didn't reach the same level as his debut album. Instead of the massive push he got the first time around, he was moving without the full G-Unit promotional force behind him, and that absence hurt the numbers. The album dropped on March 27, 2007, debuting at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with 140,000 first-week sales. Strong numbers. But not the explosion everyone expected after Straight Out of Cashville. The singles I Know You Want Me and Get, Buck didn't hit as hard either, especially when compared to the success of his earlier records. At the same time all this was happening, 50 started accusing Buck of being cool with all of 50's known rivals. The Game, Jadakiss, Fat Joe, Jim Jones, everybody he had issues with. Buck tried to explain that he was in building friendships with them. He was mostly relaying info back to 50 about what they were saying, but 50 didn't hear it that way. He saw any contact at all as betrayal, as if Buck was drifting away from the team. Then came the money accusations. 50 claimed Buck was spending money recklessly, not handling his taxes. And that 50 had even paid Buck his taxes twice before refusing to bail him out a third time. Da-da! This became another major crack in their relationship, a crack that would only get deeper over time. By 2008, Buck got hit with a brutal reality check. He discovered he owed the IRS $300,000. That number wasn't just stressful, it was career-breaking. That debt became a huge weight on his back, and the timing could not have been worse for everything else that was about to collapse around him. The start of 2008 was rough on every level. In January, Buck did a show with Lil Wayne and Birdman. And during the performance, both of them publicly said Buck should dip from Junette and join Young Money, Cash Money. What made it worse was that Buck seemed to agree right there on stage, nodding and smiling like he was open to the idea. When 50 saw that footage, he was furious. He took it as a straight slap in the face. Then in February 2008, Junette dropped a new mixtape, Return of the Body Snatchers Volume 1, and Buck was nowhere to be found on it. Fans were confused because Junette had just released a track a few months earlier called Feel Good, featuring Buck, so him suddenly being missing from the project didn't make sense. People sensed tension, but they didn't know the bomb that was about to drop. Then came the moment that completely changed the trajectory of Buck's life. The beginning of the fall, the bankruptcy spiral, the chaos he still feels the effects of today. Back in March 2008, 50 and young, Buck had a private phone call, a conversation nobody knew existed at the time, and 50 secretly recorded the entire thing. After that conversation, things seemed cool again on the surface. Buck appeared on Junette's Elephant in the Sand mixtape the same month, and it looked like the crew might actually fix their issues. But that peace didn't last long, not even close. On March 20th, 2008, Junette, Raps Magazine released an interview where Young Buck said, in quotes, "I'm still waiting on a royalty check, period. I've never seen a royalty check since I've signed with Junette, so hell yeah. I'll tell you one damn thing, that show money is that good. I've never in my career cashed a royalty check." That statement went off like an explosion. Now here's the part that made this whole thing so messy. That interview was old. It had been done months before, but the outlet randomly dropped it right when Buck and 50 were trying to fix their relationship. The timing looked like sabotage, real talk, and it instantly lit up the whole situation again. Shaw Money XL rushed to do damage control the next day, denying Buck his claims and saying Buck had made over $10 million while working under 50's guidance. But once the headlines hit, the damage was already spreading everywhere and things were moving fast. Then on April 7th, 2008, a Monday morning 50 Cent called into Hot 97 and officially announced that Buck was no longer part of G-Unit as a group. Remember, even though he was still signed to G-Unit Records as a solo artist? This was the first time the public heard the split was real and people were stunned. The following week, when G-Unit pulled up to Hot 97 as a full crew, 50 went even deeper into the story. He claimed Buck had a drug problem and that his behavior had become unpredictable. Hearing that publicly humiliated Buck, and for a few weeks he stayed silent, probably trying to process the insanity of everything happening at once. Then on May 12, 2008, Buck fired back with a track called My Interview, addressing being kicked out and denying the drug allegations with full emotion. It was raw, emotional, and personal, exactly how Buck operated when he felt betrayed. Things went quiet for a moment. Until June, when Buck made a move that crossed a line 50 was never going to forgive. On June 15, 2008, during a show, Buck walked onto the stage and shouted, "Junette!" But not in a good way. He dissed the whole crew in front of the crowd. It became the point of no return, the moment where the bridge burned completely. Just 2 days later, on June 17, 2008, 50 dropped the full taped phone call, the secret conversation where Buck was crying on the phone begging for help. That recording hit the internet like a bomb, and the whole world heard Buck at his lowest moment. Buck clapped back the next day, June 18th, with a diss track called The Taped Conversation, and the game even jumped on the remix, adding fuel to an already wild situation. A few days later, on June 21st, there were rumors of a collaborative mixtape between Buck and Game called Worth More Than 50 Cent, rumored to drop in July, but it never happened. When G-Unit dropped their second group album Terminate on Sight on July 1st, 2008, Young Buck was only featured on 4 tracks, basically treated like a guest on an album that should have showcased him as a core member. The distance was obvious. and fans could feel something was seriously off in the energy between Buck and the rest of the camp. For the rest of 2008, Buck barely released any new music because, according to him, 50 Cent was blocking his ability to record and drop an official project. Since Buck was still technically signed to G-Unit Records, 50 had the power to stop anything Buck tried to put out, forcing Buck to find a different way to keep his name alive. So starting in 2009, Buck went straight back to the streets with mixtapes, and something wild happened that only the real listeners noticed. For a lot of fans, including people who studied Buck's career closely, 2009 was actually when Buck sounded the hungriest he had ever been. You could hear it in his voice. The frustration, the grind, the fear, the ambition, all blending into some of the most raw music of his career. He was struggling heavy behind the scenes, but he turned that pain into fuel. Buck dropped several mixtapes in 2009, including Back for the Streets on April 11th and the critically praised Back on My Buck on May 26th. Tracks like I Want It All and I Got It, featuring Young Jeezy, showed Buck at his sharpest. Most focused, most determined mindset ever. But while the music was hitting harder than ever, his personal and legal issues were spiraling to catastrophic levels. On August 3, 2010, the IRS raided Buck's crib over more than $300,000 in unpaid taxes, a nightmare situation that quickly turned criminal. During the raid, they found a hammer. And since Buck was a convicted felon due to the 2004 Vibe Awards case, they charged him with possession, even though Buck insisted the hammer belonged to his licensed tour manager. My campaign addressed the IRS raid head-on, proving once again that he could take any disaster and turn it into music instantly, pouring the chaos straight into the booth. Then on August 19, 2010, Buck filed for Chapter 13 bankruptcy. But hidden inside that desperate move was a strategic gem most people never noticed: that bankruptcy filing actually freed him from his G-Unit Records contract. It was one of the only ways out of the deal, and even though the situation was messy, it gave Buck something he hadn't had in years: independence. With that new freedom, he dropped his independent album The Rehab on September 7, 2010. It debuted at number 55 on the Billboard 200, selling around 6,400 copies in the first week. Solid numbers for an indie release, but nowhere near the heights he once reached with G-Unit. But the legal problems didn't stop. In March 2011, G-Unit Records filed a $10 million lawsuit against Buck, adding another huge weight to his already heavy load. Still, there was a small spark of hope when, in late 2011, 50 Cent tweeted, in quotes, "For some reason, I think young Buck is mad at me. Who cares?
Oh.
I'm giving my $250,000 back, sucker." It wasn't exactly an olive branch. But it was the first time in a long time 50 publicly mentioned Buck without pure hostility. Then on March 4, 2012, things took a darker turn when Buck survived a drive-by shooting outside a South Nashville club. And during the attack, his girl was hit once in the shoulder. It was another terrifying reminder of how dangerous things around Buck had become. Just a few months later, on July 13, 2012, Buck was officially sentenced to 18 months in prison on the weapons charges tied to the IRS raid. And in August, the IRS held a public auction selling off Buck's possessions, jewelry, studio equipment, personal items, collecting only $53,000 while humiliating Buck in front of the world. Seeing his entire life laid out on tables for strangers to bid on was one of the lowest moments of his career. Buck officially turned himself in later that month to begin his 18-month sentence. Then, on October 2, 2013, young Buck was released from prison, and what happened next shocked the entire hip-hop community behind the scenes. After years of silence and cold tension, 50 Cent had been mending relationships with Tony Yayo and Lloyd Banks, and behind the scenes, people around him said he had been thinking about Buck too. Then on June 1, 2014, at Hot 97 Summer Jam, something nobody thought would ever happen again took place. 50 brought out all 3 original G-Unit members, and the whole stadium exploded. It was an official G-Unit reunion, a real moment in hip-hop history, and fans were losing their minds seeing the original squad back together on stage. They followed the reunion with 2 EPs, The Beauty of Independence on August 25, 2014, and The Beast is G-Unit on March 3, 2015, and both projects had serious heat. It felt like the chemistry was back, like the old machine was running again. And for the first time in years, fans genuinely believed the crew had healed their wounds. During this period, Buck went crazy with the work ethic. He launched his ambitious 10 series of mixtapes to 10 Bullets, 10 Bricks, 10 Pints, 10 Bodies, and more, all dropped between 2015 and 2018. It showed exactly who Buck was at the core. Someone who never stopped grinding, no matter what life threw at him. Someone who stayed locked into the craft even when the business side was falling apart. But like so many times in his story, more trouble came knocking. On July 15th, 2016, Buck was arrested over a dispute involving his ex-girlfriend's apartment and was sentenced to 7 months lockdown. It was another setback in a long list of setbacks. Another moment where the streets and his temper collided with his career at the worst possible time. Then in 2018, just when it seemed like things were turning around, Buck dropped the single Canty Lose on March 30th, a straight-fire track that should VA gotten way more love than it did. He announced that his third studio album would be executive produced by both 50 Cent and Dr. Dre, a dream lineup that had fans insanely hyped, thinking Buck was finally about to get the comeback he deserved. But the relationship with 50 collapsed again, and this time the fallout was even uglier. 50 claimed Buck owed him over $300,000 and started issuing cease and desist orders blocking anything Buck tried to release. Every move Buck made got shut down before it even reached the public, and the tension became impossible to ignore. Then in 2019, leaked audio involving Buck and a trans person went viral, and the clip spread fast across social media. Instead of staying silent or handling it behind the scenes, 50 publicly mocked Buck online, posting disrespectful comments and jokes that added more pressure to an already chaotic situation. The whole thing turned messy instantly, and it essentially shut the door on any chance of a future G-Unit reunion. By 2020, the damage was done, the bridge was beyond repair, and the door to G-Unit was officially closed forever for young Buck. Buck filed for bankruptcy again, this time with one clear mission: to break free from his contract and dodge 50's heavy lawsuit. After a long, exhausting legal battle, Buck ended up losing the case in 2023 and agreed to pay $200,690 of the alleged $250,000 debt. To cover this, and the rest of what he owed, he liquidated around $1.05 million in assets, dropped $445,000 on legal fees, and left just under $600,000 for creditors. That alone shows how deep the financial trenches had become for him, and how far he had fallen from the peak of platinum success. Then things got even tougher. In April 2025, Buck was arrested once again and sentenced to 30 days in jail after repeated violations of his bond supervision connected to his pending domestic assault case from 2020. He served his time and was released around May 12, 2025. But the legal battle wasn't over. The trial was pushed back to January 12, 2026, adding even more weight to an already heavy chapter in his life. But here's the surprising part. Despite everything, Buck actually seems stronger mentally and emotionally than he's been in years. He's active on social media, reconnecting with fans, sharing positive moments, and celebrating milestones like the 18th anniversary of Out of Cashville. Instead of drowning in old drama, he looks focused on rebuilding his name, his legacy, and his peace, something people thought he might never get back. And after surviving label wars, financial collapse, lawsuits, public humiliation, prison time, and some of the most brutal career setbacks in hip-hop history, young Buck is still standing tall. His story ISNT just wild at S, one of the most dramatic rise-fall-rise journeys the culture has ever seen, and the last chapters are still being written.